Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Business Incorporated. I'm Chimezi Obi Iwago. On the show today, South Africa exits recession as GDP expands 2.2% in third quarter. Togolese Republic becomes the Africa Finance Corporation's 20th member state. Plus, Kenya to roll over $760 million syndicated loan this fiscal year. Well, we'll start off in South Africa, whose economy grew more than expected in the third quarter as manufacturing and agriculture accelerated to pull the country out of its first recession in nearly a decade. South Africa's economy expanded 2.2% in the third quarter in quarter-on-quarter terms, snapping out of recession after a revised 0.4% contraction in the second quarter. The positive data is a boost to President Cyril Ramaphosa, who has pledged to kickstart growth after a decade of stagnation under his predecessor, Jacob Zuma. It will also ease fears of credit downgrades deeper into non-investment following warnings by agencies about the economy. All of the top three ratings firms have cited weak growth as a major threat. Manufacturing expanded 7.5%, agriculture grew 6.5%, while mining showed a 8.8% contraction. And to the markets now, the South African JSE index ticked up marginally at intraday, not reacting so much to the positive GDP numbers as investors booked profit owing to Monday's positive performance. The index was up 0.05%. Now the NSE index was also in the green, 0.29%. Egypt, however, bucked the trend with a heavy 2.23% fall. Kenya closed in the green on Monday. In the Middle East, markets were mostly upbeat at intraday, with three of the markets we tracked trading in the green. Abu Dhabi led gains by 2.68%. Saudi, however, dropped 0.25%. In Europe, stocks were lower in morning trade amid rising doubts over whether the world's two largest economies will be able to resolve their trade differences. However, there are other developments moving the markets. Let's talk to Paul. Hello, Paul. Good afternoon. Thank you again for joining us.
Hey, good afternoon.
Right. Now, after intense negotiations that ended in a 16-hour session through the night, Eurozone finance ministers have agreed on a Eurozone reform deal. What's the significance of the deal for Europe?
Well, if we look at the big perspective here, Europe started 20 years ago with the introduction of the euro as a single currency for the Eurozone, with this vision of a joined and united Europe that would grow together more closely. And also at one point have a joined European economy. Now it looks like we're going to have to wait a little longer, even after those 20 years, until we get there, because today's decision wasn't the big throw that many were hoping for, especially French President Emmanuel Macron, who had stated his vision that would include a European finance minister and a European budget. Now, the ministers' meeting, they did agree to continue to work on a joined EU budget, so that's at least 1+. The big achievement was the strengthening of the European Stability Mechanism. It's essentially crisis management here. So this is a fund that will lend money to countries in trouble. And in the future, it's supposed to also work as a precautionary measure to make sure that there aren't any spillover effects, that there aren't any situations that are too bad to begin with. Of course, one of these crises that Europe might see is the situation in Italy, where the government is planning for a hefty deficit spending. So that's one of the areas that the Eurozone might want to strengthen up on. Still, we're far from that original vision that we saw 20 years ago, despite the strengthening of the bloc.
All right, let's look at the crisis in the European banking sector. A number of big banks there seem to be getting into trouble over money laundering. First, it was Danske Bank and then Deutsche Bank. What exactly is happening to European banks?
Well, if you have it in one spot, you'll have it in many. European banks are very much intertwined. There's a network of trust within European banks that work together, and so it's not a big surprise that one would lead to the other. And it's an international problem, really, that even goes beyond Europe. So if you look at Danske Bank, the unit under scrutiny is its Estonian branch that funneled about 200 billion euros of suspicious transfers. The money mostly came from Russians laundering money, not just oligarchs, regular people. So pointing at issues in Putin's realm. And they went mostly to UK firms, so it also implicates the UK here. One of the concerns is that maybe Danish banks aren't supervised enough, and one suggestion was to put them in, or to bring them into the European banking union. However, within that banking union, we've also seen this trouble with Deutsche Bank. It was also involved in transfers coming from Danske Bank, but it also has its own problems with money laundering, has been repeatedly charged with that, paid hefty fines in 2017 in the US, and now the issue has also resurfaced for Deutsche Bank. Here, one of the biggest problems is the IT system that Deutsche Bank has is in a terrible state, and it makes it very difficult for the bank to automatically identify who its customers are. So really, the bank doesn't exactly know who its customers are, and it needs to check manually, which of course makes it much more difficult to find out if there's anything going wrong. So major problem with the image for a European banking system currently.